young black students, young students from state school backgrounds, young students from deprived backgrounds are being sent a damaging message that they do not have a space in these institutions. Representation needs to be diversified. We need to see an increase in diversity in institutions such as Oxford, such as Cambridge. What I wanted to address in this video is the problem that lack of representation has on those who are underrepresented. Hey people, and welcome back to my channel. I really hope all of you guys are doing well, and I'd just like to quickly say thank you so much for all the support on both my Instagram and YouTube platform, and we're so close to 4,000 subscribers. I don't know the count when I'm uploading this. Just my genuine thanks. I believe this video is going to be named Let's Talk Lack of Representation. What kind of brought about the inspiration to film this video was a recent message that I received on Instagram, and I'll keep her anonymous, but she essentially said to me that she'd really like to apply to Cambridge. However, she couldn't see a place for her in Cambridge. She couldn't see herself actually being in Cambridge. And this ended up being the start to a really long-winded conversation where I kind of gave her advice and we kind of spoke, and she's the loveliest girl. And if you're watching this, thank you so much for sending me the message, because one, it takes great amount of guts, and two, it opened up this conversation between me and you, and now between me and the rest of my subscribers. So honestly, thank you. What I wanted to address in this video is the problem that lack of representation has on those who are underrepresented. In this video, I'm going to be exploring the problem of underrepresentation in institutions such as Oxbridge. A lot of people will point fingers at the lack of diversity and representation, at the fact that students aren't applying. But little do they know that the reason why students aren't applying is because they're not being represented. In this video, I'm going to explore the power of representation, the power of role models in all walks of life. You know, as a black female coming from like a low socio-economical background, first generation to go to university, and you know, being on free school meals for a large proportion of my teenage years, I kind of tick all those boxes when it comes to like minorities. When you're applying to those access and outreach schemes, I'm one of those people who ticks all the criteria straight away. And I know that a lot of you guys out there, subscribers, also are. A preconception that I had before even applying to Cambridge or Oxford is, will there be a place for me? You know, the statistics on diversity in Oxbridge definitely do not work in their favour. You know, one of the most shocking statistics was that more students were admitted from one college in one city in one country than black students in the whole world. I find that absolutely absurd and unjustifiable on both the front of the University of Oxford, but also on a more systemic level, because issues like this are systemic and are the result of further entrenched problems such as institutional racism. One thing I must say is that statistics are definitely changing and diversity is definitely progressing for the better. Oxford access and outreach teams, including unique target Oxbridge schemes and individual college access and outreach initiatives, are working incredibly hard to change this. However, we're not seeing the progress that we need to see. Why in 2020 am I still seeing messages like this? You know, when I read this message, I did not know how to feel. I had such a mixture of emotions in response. One, I was angry. Why should people of a certain demographic have to feel this way? Before they've even applied to university, they're already feeling imposter syndrome. And number two, I was upset because I could identify myself through the girl who was messaging me. I could see myself through her lens, because I was once that girl who looked at Oxbridge, who looked at the statistics, who looked at the colours of people there and thought, wait, hold up a second, there's not a single black person in that picture. There's not a single black person in that sports team. You know, it's like, can I make it? This problem that I'm addressing in this video is an intricate interplay between various factors that lead to the inequality that we see in our educational system, often characterized by massive gaps in education between people from different ethnic groups, people from different socio-economical groups. Not only is there the problem that there isn't the representation in these institutions, but two, there are further odds against certain demographics. There's the odds that come with being of a certain ethnic group, there's the odds that come with being of a certain skin colour, being of a certain income strata or class. It's already 10 times harder to progress onto further education if you come from a certain postcode, because often you'll go to a state school that's underfunded, that doesn't have the best teachers who encourage and empower you, and often you won't have parents or contacts who are in these fields, these professional fields, who can mentor you, who can give you advice, who can show you their mistakes so you can learn from them. Before we kind of progress with the video, I'd just like to start off with a definition of what imposter syndrome is for those of you who don't know. So imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern which an individual doubts their accomplishments, capabilities, competence, and it's a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. And it can present in the work field, it can present in the education system, it can present in every single context of a person's life. And it's that feeling that you don't belong. And I guess in this context of this video, it's that feeling before you've even started university that you won't belong. I'm gonna start by some anecdotal evidence, and I'm gonna use the example of an incredible man called Sir Kenneth Lisa, who is an inspiration to people of Black heritage, Black African heritage, Black Caribbean heritage. And I just wanted to share a story because it really relates and illustrates the importance of role models. So his background, he was born in Nottingham, and he was born to a Nigerian father who he never met, and he was brought up by his British mother. And yeah, he had a rough upbringing. Some may say he was deprived, disadvantaged. He constantly lived in rundown housing, and to illustrate the depth of this, he grew up in a house that had a hanging bathtub and toilet. And this guy did not let this limit him in any sense. He was an ambitious character, and he went on to study natural sciences at Fitzwilliam College in Cambridge. He went on to study social political management sciences as his second degree, and he was a man of many firsts. He was the first British-born black man to be the director of a FTSE 100 company. He was the first black master of the Company of Information Technologists. He was the first Lord Deputy Director of the Institutes of Directors. But what is significant about this guy? Because you're probably thinking, your friend, you're stating this guy's credentials, and yeah, he sounds like a good guy, but why and how is this relevant? He originally did not want to be labelled as a BAME model. The reason why he was resistant was because he did not initially want to give in to the stereotypes that one person's background should limit their ability to succeed. However, a conversation with one of his drivers changed his mind. I had an epiphany a few years ago. I was being rather dismissive while on the way to chair a debate about the need for role models for young black men. My driver, whom I'd known for several years, stopped me in my tracks. He said that he lived in Peckham, and his children believed that people like them did not work. People like them did not go on to gain professional jobs. They dismissed their dad's evidence to the contrary in favour of their neighbour's experience. So instead of accepting their dad's evidence of success as a source of empowerment, they were favouring their neighbours' experiences and dismissing their father's. Going back to the story, this is what Elisa says. I sympathised and asked how things were now, and he said that the problem was solved. Both kids were going to university. I asked what's changed their attitudes, and he said that he had downloaded a copy of his CV and shown it to them as proof of what was possible. I am rarely speechless, but I was then. I think the power in this experience lies in the fact that as soon as those children saw that it was possible through their father's CV, they instantly started to imagine themselves in their positions. They instantly started to realise that if my dad can do it, and my dad comes from a similar background to me, I can also do it. And likewise, the same thing exists on the other side of the argument. When there's a lack of representation, young black students, young students from state school backgrounds, young students from deprived backgrounds are being sent a damaging message that they do not have a space in these institutions, in these workplaces, in the House of Commons. What do we have to answer to them? It is clear to see through various experiments done in children that the most powerful role models are those that we can identify ourselves through. Identification is the process of associating qualities, characteristics, or views with a certain role model who possesses that same character. When a learner identifies with a role model, they will remember their behaviour and add that behaviour to a repertoire of behaviours from which they can go on and imitate. Even before we go on to start to act in the ways we do, we have a repertoire, a collection of actions from which we can pick the actions that we're going to go on and perform. If you cannot see a role model through which you identify yourself through in the place where you want to be, how can you even start to add that action into your repertoire to inspire you, to empower you, for you to learn from? I think it's safe to say that representation needs to be diversified. We need to see an increase in diversity in institutions such as Oxford, such as Cambridge, in the medical profession, in the law profession, so that children that we're raising up, that we're empowering in secondary, primary school, can see themselves through people and can aspire to be in those positions. You see, there's power in imagination, and once you establish representation, then imagination quickly follows suit. And once you have imagination, then you unleash creativity. That child, that individual, that student is then able to go on and feel empowered and confident in their own abilities. And from there, honestly, the sky is the limit. Now, I know that a lot of this video has been me just highlighting the problems that exist. However, I also wanted to give you guys out there some advice to you guys who may feel the same as this lovely girl who messaged me. What I want to tell you firstly and foremost is that, one, the statistics don't define you. In my experience, I can testify to say that once I start to look at the statistics and internalize them and make them a reality for me, it starts to poison and intoxicate my worldview, in the sense that I start to let those statistics feed into me, to start to dampen my confidence in my own abilities. I start to think, yo, okay, I'm a black female from so and so background. These statistics tell me that I have a 3%, less than 3%, 1% chance of getting into this profession. I probably shouldn't apply. I start to internalize those really toxic beliefs. So one thing I can tell you is, yes, be aware that it's a reality, but two, don't let that restrict you at all. And number two, I want to tell you that you're applying to that position, to that university. It's a statement of resistance, of defiance to people who are at the top of society, who want to keep society the way it is, who want to maintain the status quo, who want to keep the middle class white men in universities such as Oxbridge and everyone else away from it, essentially. So in you applying, not only are you paving the way for future generations, but you're also showing a stance of defiance, and that's powerful. Your application in itself is powerful. And number three, as I've already said, you're paving the way for future generations. If there are no role models present where you want to go, become that role model. I can assure you, generations behind you, there's going to be that young girl from an immigrant background, that young Indian boy who also will want to be where you want to be as well, and who will Google stuff, who will look at the statistics. And if we start to enter these spaces, permeate these spaces, then we start to create the change that we want to see. We all know the proverb, be the change that you want to see in the world, and honestly, it's so true. Now, my last advice for you guys is to see your position as a minority as a source of empowerment. At the beginning, I really had a negative attitude towards the fact that I was black, the fact that I was from this background, the fact that I was this. However, when I stepped away from this intoxicating mindset, started to realize that that uniqueness, that difference is what sets me apart from others and gives me a unique worldview, gives me a unique perspective. I always think to myself when I'm feeling low or not motivated when it comes to like university work, look, Fran, look at the odds that are against you and look how you overcame and you were victorious and you conquered them. If you did it then, you can do it again. And that innately is a source of motivation for me. And I encourage it to be a source of motivation to you guys as well. So guys, we have reached the end of my video. This is definitely a different aura to what we're used to on this channel, but I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you leave this video feeling educated, empowered, and also encouraged. I'm gonna try and make a series out of this. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. This Let's Talk series has a ring to it, and in this Let's Talk series, I want to address real issues that affect students and people from ethnic, minority, and marginalized backgrounds. The topics that I'm planning on talking about are imposter syndrome, because it deserves a video of its own. I want to talk about the realities of being an ethnic minority, the realities of being an immigrant, the realities of being a black student, the realities of imposter syndrome, and the realities of gaining confidence and empowerment also. So yeah, guys, let me know in the description bar below if this is something that you'd like to see. And with that said, I'm gonna say goodbye, wishing you the best rest to your evening or day or whatever, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Au revoir.